Hello everyone, Summer here. Today I'm showing you how to make a gift box that is durable, it fits into a flat rate storage box, and it's great to send cookies, candy, any of that type of stuff in. This is using the Steampunk Spells paper pack from Graphic 45. I'm using medium to heavyweight chipboard. The box opens up and it also has a easel card on top. So to get started, you're going to need some cardstock in whatever color you choose. In this case, since it's Halloween themed, I'm using black cardstock. You'll need some pattern paper, and so I'm using the Steampunk Spells from my pattern paper. And you'll also need some medium to heavyweight chipboard. With your chipboard, you're going to cut 2 pieces of chipboard into 8.5 by 8.5 inch squares. You're going to cut some cardstock into 8.5 by 8.5 squares. You're going to need 3 pieces of that. You're going to need your chipboard, and you're going to want to cut that into 4 2.5 by 7 3/4 strips. You're going to cut 4 strips that are 7 inches by 1 3/4. You're going to cut a strip that's 7 3/4 by 2. 2 pieces that are 5.5 by 7 3/4. And 2 pieces that are 9 1/4 by 5.5. Now, I'm going to make sure that I have a PDF on my blog so that you can actually go in and print this instructions step by step. You're also going to need some heavy-duty tape such as score tape, and you're also going to need a good liquid adhesive. In this case, I'm using Fabri-Tac. For the easel card portion, you're going to need some cardstock. This measures 10 by 5. You're also going to need a 5 by 5 square, a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4, a 4 by 4, and a 4 3/4 by 4 3/4. So let's get started. Okay, the next thing that you want to do is you want to go ahead and get your scoring done. So I'm going to take my piece that is 2 inches by 7 3/4 inches, and I am going to score that at 1 inch. This piece will end up being our hinge for our box so that our lid opens and closes. The next piece that you want to score is your 5.5 by 7 3/4 inch strips. You're going to score it at 2.5, and you're going to score it at 5. And you're going to do that to both pieces. The next pieces that you want to score is your 9 1/4 by 5.5 inch strips. And you're going to score this at 2.5 and 5, just like with the previous 2 pieces. And then you're going to rotate your paper and score at 3/4 of an inch. And then I flip my paper and do it at 3/4 of an inch on the other side. And you'll repeat that process for your next piece as well. So 2.5, 5 inches, and then 3/4 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch. And while I have my scoreboard out, I'm also going to go ahead and score my easel card. Now again, this piece for the easel card is 10 inches by 5 inches wide. I'm going to score at 2.5 and 5. And that's all the scoring that you need to do for this. For the next step, we're going to go ahead and start assembling pieces for our box. The two pieces that were scored, that were 9 1/4 by 5 1/2, as well as the two pieces that were 7 3/4 by 5 1/2. Now what I've done is I've added score tape to the small 1/2 inch lip that was created when we made our score lines. And that's going to allow for the bottom of our box to sit in. Now for the piece for our bottom of the box, I might not have told you, but it is a 7 3/4 by 7 3/4 inch square for the bottom of your box. Once we get our score tape on, we want to take our scissors, and a small box was created when we did our score lines, and we're going to trim those off on both sides. And then we're going to go in and we're going to make some notches. It just helps it when you're folding your pieces over. So I'm just going to notch out a little, like a blanket or corner of each side, and another notch here on the flap. And we're going to do that for both pieces. Now on to our next step, where we start adding in our chipboard. So for the next step, I'm adding in my pieces of chipboard. I have the 4 pieces of chipboard here that are 2 1/2 by 7 3/4. Now what I've done is, since my box is black, just in case any pieces of it happen to show, I've added some black Sharpie marker to the sides and to the bottom, and then along the bottom edge. And you'll see why as I start to fold this over. This is a universal box, so you never know how thick your chipboard's going to be if you're using like a medium weight versus a heavy weight versus a lightweight chipboard. So I want to make sure that this edge doesn't show. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Fabri-Tac, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to put some onto my chipboard. I like using Fabri-Tac for these steps because it gives you a little bit of wiggle room when you need to make some adjustments. So I'm going to add my Fabri-Tac, and in this bottom box that was created, I'm just going to put my chipboard down. Okay. Then the next thing that I'm going to do is I am going to add Fabri-Tac to my sides, flap, and the very top flap of this. And then I'm going to take and fold my chipboard down. And then I like to just use my bone folder to crease right here so that I have a nice flap. And as you can see with this chipboard, I don't know if you can tell, there's just a little bit that shows, but you're not going to be able to see that when you do your box. I also like to go in once I've done this step, and I'm going to just notch this part right here a little bit. That's my own personal preference. You don't have to do it that way. It just helps later when you go to fold. Once that's done, then I take and I fold it up and fold it up on both sides so that you have these two little wings here. For the next step, you do have to work a little bit quickly. I'm going to take my piece that is 7 3/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and I'm going to add my Fabri-Tac right here to this flap. Although my bottle is almost empty because I use it all the time. And I'm going to add it to the flap of my second piece that I already have cut. And I'm going to line this piece up right here. And you see it kind of starts to lean backwards. And then I'm going to line this piece up, but before the glue dries, I like to take my other piece of chipboard and put it in here just to make sure that everything is nice and square. And once I have that placed, then I'm going to put my adhesive on the back of this piece of chipboard. And adhere that down. Then I'm going to take and flip this up so that I get a nice crease starting for this top flap. Again, add my adhesive. And fold it down. So right now we've got our 3 sides of our box. I'm going to flip mine over and I'm going to repeat that same process and add my other piece of chipboard. And be right back. Now for the next step, we're going to put our bottom of our box in. And all you do is just go in and remove your pieces of score tape. Now I like to stand up when I do this next step just so that I can make sure that I get it correct and square. Make sure your pieces are folded down from the bottom. And I'll take and put my box on my mat. Try to square it up. And then I take my piece that is 7 3/4 by 7 3/4. And place it in my box. Because it can get a little bit tricky. And place that down. And on to the next step. Okay, for the next step, we're going to use our 2 pieces of 8.5 by 8.5 square chipboard. I have gone ahead and put some black around the edges just in case a little bit happens to show, and I've also done the sides. You're going to use your 8.5 by 8.5 square pieces of black cardstock. We're also going to be using our 7 3/4 by 2 inches piece of cardstock that we've scored at 1 inch. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take and put score tape all around the edge of my cardstock. And I've already gone ahead and done that. And you're going to do it to your 3 pieces of cardstock. Take off the tape backing and go ahead and place your cardstock onto your chipboard. Now the reason that I say 3 pieces of chipboard is because I like, or pieces of cardstock to your chipboard, because I like to keep the bottom of it brown It just makes it easier when I go to stamp my handmade to put it onto this chipboard, since this is already black. So you're going to cover two sides of one and one side of the other. The one that's double side we're going to set aside for a moment while we take care of the next step. So here was our box that we just made, where we put the piece of cardstock down the bottom, and I've taken and put score tape all around the edges of my box. For this next step, I do like to stand up to do it, just so that I can make sure that I get things center. But I'm going to center my box or try to center my box onto my piece of chipboard. So now we've got the sides and the bottom. Sorry about the light. Here we go. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my piece of cardstock that we have scored down the middle, and I have covered the back two halves where the score is still there with some of my score tape. And like we said before, this is going to be our hinge for the box. So I'm going to take off two sides of my score tape and just take my box and line up the score line right with my box, if I can do it straight without getting it crooked. Alright, and then we'll be right back. Now for the next step, we're going to remove our adhesive strips, and then we're going to take the top of our box, and again, this is something that's best done standing up, and then we're going to adhere our box lid to our box. And sorry if that's a little out of focus. So we've removed our backing and we have actually adhered our lid, and this is the box. It's very simple, very easy to do. So the next that we're going to do is we're going to decorate the box. So I'm going to set that aside for a moment. And we had 4 strips that were cut to 7 by 1 3/4. I'm also going to take some pattern paper, and I have cut this to 7 1/4 by 2 inches. And using my ATG, since we're just decorating now, I am just going to adhere this down. Trying to make sure I got all my little adhesive pieces off of here. And then you'll want to do that with all of your other pieces. And then you'll want to adhere that to the sides of your box. Alright, and I'll be right back. So now that we have our sides decorated, I'm going to start working on the top. And to layer the top piece, I'm using an 8 by 8 piece of cardstock from the Steampunk Spells. I'm using a 7 5/8 square piece of black cardstock, and then a 7 3/8 by 7 3/8 piece of pattern cardstock. And then I'm going to adhere that to the top, and I will be right back. Now to continue decorating the top, I've gone ahead and added a 5 5.5 by 5.5 inch square black piece of cardstock so that it can break up between the turquoise and the turquoise. Just give it a little bit of grounding. So next we're going to work on our easel card. This is the piece that we have that was 10 inches by 5.5 inches, and we scored it at 2.5 and we scored it at 5. On the bottom piece here, I have added some score tape. I'm also going to add some ATG tape to the top square of my card. And fold it in half on the score line. And I'm going to place that right here on the center of my box. So from here, I have the score tape, and I'm going to remove my pieces of score tape. So bye-bye backing. And then here is that 5.5 by 5.5 or 5 by 5 square piece of cardstock that matches this cardstock here. I've gone ahead and decorated the front of my card, and then I just take and I line that up just like that. So when you open the card, it will easel up just like that. Now, flipping this open, I have some more cardstock that is cut at 4 3/4 by 4 3/4. I've actually taken 2 pieces, cut them, and then put them together to make one piece that's separated by 2 colors. And I'm going to adhere that to the middle. And then I have a piece of trim. And I'm going to adhere that trim down to the card. I'm going to just use some of my ATG for this. And my trim is 4 3/4 inches wide. And now what that'll do is when you flip the card up, it will act as your stopper to keep your card up. And from here I have some leaves that I have cut from the Spellbinders foliage die. I've also cut out some of these spiral blossoms here. I cut them out in black and coiled them up. And I have cut out some pieces from the Tim Holtz Tattered Floral die, this one and this one. And when I put them together, as well as a piece of, these were Recollections flowers or something that I got from Michael's, and I colored them with Distress ink and tumbled glass and sprayed them with a little bit of the Radiant Rain in the ice. And I have put those together. I don't know if you can see, but I've made these little flowers here, which I'll use to decorate my box. But you want to make sure that you get your card down first before you start adding your flowers and your embellishments, because you want to make sure that you've got enough room that the card will still lay flat. And then once I have that all adhered down and I find my placement for all of that, then I have this little piece that I've cut out, and I'm going to only tack it in 3 places on this side of the box. And what that does is it allows me to be able to flip my box up with the card not flipping backwards, but you can still slide the card out and slide it back in. And I'll be right back. So here is the finished box. I have tacked down the card here so that you can see that the card stays in place when you lift the lid. It doesn't flip backwards. I've added some stick pins that I've made as well to it. The inside of the card, I did go in and re-adhere the trim with some Scotch quick dry glue, and then I also added some bling across the center of it and a little sentiment that I cut out of the paper pack, as well as another little card on the inside. Plus there's room to write a sentiment for whoever I give the box to. And then you can see that the card just slides right back down inside of there. I also went back to the sides of the box and I've added some gears to go along with the gears that are on the paper here, and I use the Spellbinders Sprightly Sprockets by Donna Salazar. And that is the completed box. You can see it's super sturdy. I can squeeze it and it's not going anywhere. The other box that I did using the same paper pack, I added some beads to it and I added some bling up here, but you see they're pretty similar, but they look completely different using the different papers. So there's lots of stuff that you can do with this box. It makes a great gift, and again, it is designed so that it'll fit in a flat rate box, and you can fill it as full and as heavy as you want to put it, and you don't have to worry about the additional shipping because of weight. So thanks for watching and have a great day.